Now, I just want to very briefly talk about the meaning of religion in English history, since this is an English language word. And before the modern period, the term religion did not imply a separate non-religious sphere of state or politics or economics or law. It meant Christian truth, fundamentally. Religion meant Christian truth. And Christian truth encompassed all institutions in England, probably up until the middle of the 19th century, effectively. There was, of course, an internal distinction between church and state, but this was not a distinction between religion and non-religion. In fact, the term church-state is used by, I think, the more critical historians. No one would have called the 16th century English government non-religious, meaning non-Christian. It would have been meaningless to have said that. Furthermore, Christianity was not a religion, not in the minds of Christians. To say that Christianity was one of a number of religions would have been just an outrage to Christians. The opposite of Christianity, of religion, was not the non-religious. It was error, superstition, heresy, paganism, barbarism. Those were the terms that were used. The modern idea of a generic religious experience, which is in principle available to people in any society, in any language, in any culture, historical or prehistorical, would have been unthinkable to Christians. That is my claim, at least. Of course, this didn't mean to say that there were no distinctions, no ways of ordering the world. They didn't need to keep talking about religion. In fact, in the text that I have read, and my recent book that I mentioned, Discourse on Civility and Barbarity, is based on a reading of English historical documents since the 16th century. And actually the word religion very rarely appears. People hardly talked about religion. Why? Because everybody knew what religion was. And they were concerned about, organization, human relations. Let me give you some examples. They talked about the Lords Ecclesiastical and the Lords Temporal. The Lords Ecclesiastical were bishops who sat in Parliament with the Lords Temporal and made laws. The only time, really, that you get the word religious being used in these texts is the religious, referring to a specific class of people, the monastic orders. They were the religious. And the religious were contrasted with the secular priests. Secular priests, are secular priests non-religious? It's a nonsense. The terms have fundamentally changed their meaning. The king was anointed. The king was thought of as the king of England was a kind of a priest. He had priestly powers. He was anointed. And at the same time, of course, the Pope was an emperor. The Pope was an emperor. Pontifex Maximus, he took over the title of the Roman Emperor. And of course the Roman Emperor, who was the head of the Roman state, was also a sacred figure. The invention of various words. The modern term politics, the first place that I have been able to find any consistent discourse on politics as a domain separate from religion is in 1680 in the writings of John Locke and William Penn. There may be earlier examples of it, but if you're talking about a consistent discourse, it's very difficult to find. The word state, which we take for granted, the state, or the national state, Quentin Skinner, the theorist of politics, he has argued that the modern idea of the state is something in itself emerged in the 16th century, and it was just beginning to be separated from the person of the king. Am I going too slowly? Am I okay for the time?
Another 5 minutes.
Now, there was a distinction between civil and ecclesiastical courts. The civil courts were secular, but their most important function was to track down and punish heretics. The distinction between civil and ecclesiastical courts was not a distinction between religious and non-religious, which again was unthinkable. How was Christian truth imagined? What was the predominant metaphor of Christian truth in the documents, at least, that I've read? It was the commonwealth, or the commonweal, it was the earlier word. And I would like to think of this as the imagining a ritual order in anthropological sense, on analogy with the human body. It was a holistic metaphor. In the idea of the commonweal or commonwealth, every limb was necessary for the functioning of the whole. Rather like Purusha in India, a little different as well. Some limbs are more important than others. So that, for example, the king is often represented as the heart, the king's advisors are the head, the king's the warlike aristocracy who defend the nation are the shoulders, the peasants who work the land are the feet, and so on and so forth. A little bit like the caste system, actually, like the Varna Shramadam. But we had our English version of it, and it embodied hierarchy into the nature of things. So this was religion, as it manifested itself in the ritual order of human beings.